Could HEMA be as big as boxing or UFC or wrestling? Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria, which is a HEMA club, as you well know. Now, there's a brilliant video, which I'll link straight below here, on the Armchair Violence channel. And it's a great channel, check it out. Lots of interesting views on that, and a really good video, which I basically agree with all of. But, and I'll get to the but in a second, and also a quick thanks to my viewer Keith Roberts for emailing me with the link to this video. Which actually I found through a couple of other routes as well. But anyway, thanks a lot for sharing that with me. If you think there are videos like this that would be of interest to my viewers on this channel, then always, drop me a line and send me the contacts for those. So, the basic premise of the video is, and I encourage you to go and watch it, is that essentially HEMA will always be small and people will not care about it, essentially because it's not relatable to the kind of people who like to watch things like UFC, okay? And also there's an interesting point that BJJ people don't watch BJJ tournaments because they're boring, but they like to watch BJJ people fighting other people because it's exciting, because you know who to root for, you know whether you're a kickboxing fan or whether you're a BJJ or a catch wrestling or a whatever fan. You're going to root for the person who you kind of want to win, and also there's big characters, and sometimes they hate each other and this kind of stuff. So it's more relatable for a mass audience. I completely 100% agree, and I also think it's a really interesting suggestion that HEMA go out there and challenge other sword arts. Now, this has actually been done, okay, and there are actually some very popular, I'm sure some of you will have seen some of these videos, some very popular videos on the internet where a HEMA person with a longsword has fought against someone, like kendo, kendoka, or kenjutsu, or Filipino martial arts, or, you've had a rapier against a longsword, this kind of stuff. So, absolutely kind of mismatched opponents from different systems, perhaps different ethnicity or cultures of systems, like Japanese swordsmanship versus European swordsmanship, or African or Indian or whatever, and equally different weapons, and also sometimes different nations, like Battle of the Nations, where you've got different teams from different countries. You're going to probably root for either the country that you're from or the country that you really like. So, absolutely, I completely agree with all of that. But here's the problem. Firstly, you've got the issue with the fact that we're dealing with weapons. Okay, there are unarmed parts of HEMA, of course. There's certain styles of pugilism and wrestling and stuff like this, which is part of HEMA. Absolutely. That stuff is kind of already used in UFC. Okay, boxing, believe it or not, is a Western martial art, is HEMA, and so is things like catch wrestling and stuff like that. So, absolutely, wrestling and boxing is already part of, and Savat and things like that, it's already part of unarmed martial arts, part of UFC. But the armed part of HEMA, here's the problem. There is a fundamental problem of understanding what the weapons do. Okay, so anybody with basically from anywhere in the world, the international language of violence, you sort of know when you punch someone in the head and see the effects, what that's done. You sort of know, bam, when you get a knee or you get a kick in the face, you know what that does. You know when people are rolling around on the ground and you get someone in a chokehold, or you get them in an arm bar, you can see what that does. You can imagine what that does. Everyone's got 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, and most people, I think, at some point have been hit in their lives. A lot of people have hit other people in their lives. It's completely caveman, pre-human relatable. Okay, the problem with weapons is they're not. Most people have never held a sword in their life, or a spear or dagger or any other kind of weapon like that. So they don't even know what it feels like to hold the weapon, much less they don't know what happens when that weapon hits someone else. And of course, when we hit each other with swords or daggers or spears, we're not using real sharp ones, and so the audience, unlike in the gladiatorial games in Rome where they could very much see what happened, in a modern sporting context, when someone with an épée pokes someone else who's also got an épée and pokes them in the chest, yes, scored a point, the audience is like, okay, so we saw the épée poke the person, I guess that's a point. So it's like tag? No, not really. That's the problem, because of course longswords, spears, rapiers, whatever, daggers, they don't just do tag, okay? They react on the person in a different way. And you know, John Musgrave-Waite, who was a Victorian guy, I know I'm falling into the trap here and I'm citing sources, which we shouldn't do, because people think, oh, nerd, and turn off. Although I know a lot of you don't and love the sources. But he clearly says, you know, the big difference between swordsmanship and boxing is that in boxing you exchange blows. Bam, you get hit. You know, like Rocky, if you're Rocky, you get hit loads and loads of times, but you come back fighting, okay? And you still win the fight. It's completely understandable and relatable, and you can see the effects of the blows. We can't see the effects of the blows or the stabs or whatever with weapons without using actual real weapons. So long as we've got blunt weapons, so long as we've got safety equipment, which we have to have, you can't see the effect of the blows. Therefore, a casual audience doesn't know how to interpret what they're seeing. And a very visceral example of this is many, many times I've been watching tournaments, or I've been running tournaments, or I've even been fighting in tournaments where I have seen somebody do a grapple or a kick or an elbow or a headbutt or something like this, and everyone goes, oh, yes, even HEMA people. And the reason is because that's a relatable thing that you can see the effect of. When you kick someone, they get shoved backwards. When you throw someone, they fall on the floor. When you punch someone, they reel back. Because these are real attacks. The problem is the attacks we do with blunt, flexible swords and spears and other weapons in protective equipment aren't real attacks. So they're very difficult to interpret by the audience. Now, the next issue, some people will point to Battle of the Nations, HMB, Bohurt, whatever you want to go. It goes by many different names, but that type of armoured fighting, okay? Now, in this scenario, it's essentially a hardcore form of reenactment fighting, but despite the fact it is really hardcore, and I'm not undermining it at all here, it's really hardcore, really tough, and quite scary, and most HEMA people wouldn't have the guts to do it, although some do. The fact is that they're hitting each other's armour. Okay, so the weapons that you're allowed to use and the way that you're allowed to use them is specifically designed to not injure, or not badly injure, not kill anyway, the people doing it. So you're not allowed to take your sword, half sword with it, into someone's armpit. You're not allowed to do that. Clearly you're not allowed to slide a blade into someone's eye slit of their helmet. You're not allowed to do certain other techniques which might involve, you're not allowed to use certain types of weapons, for example. Certain, you know, flails are not allowed, I think, for safety reasons. Certain obviously pointy projections are not allowed. So essentially it is limited, although it's quite scary and hardcore and tough and all of those kind of things, and I've got a huge amount of respect, and the physical, I mean the fitness and the strength of these people that do it is absolutely awesome. So not to undermine it in any way, but the fact is that it is nevertheless made into a format whereby they're not killing each other, because you don't want that, because you wouldn't be able to have a sport openly anyway, you wouldn't be able to have a sport where that happens. So in that situation, the problem is with HEMA, is HEMA people look at it and go, oh, well, we can't use our techniques. There are all these techniques for killing people in this treatise, and we can't really do that. So Bohurt fighting absolutely is a historical type of thing, essentially donking each other heavily with armour until someone falls over or chickens out or is concussed or whatever. Absolutely, that has historical counterparts and was a thing that was done. How relatable is it for the public? I think quite, and that's one of the reasons it's got a lot of attention in the media, because you can see a person knocked over. You can see a person giving up and being smashed hard. It's impressive to see. So absolutely, I think it's more relatable than something like modern Olympic fencing or kendo, where the public look at it and they're like, pfft. I mean, you look at kendo and it just looks like two guys or two people hopping backwards and forwards and whacking each other a lot with kendo shinai, and then every now and again and shouting the body part that they're hitting. And we understand there are complex rules. I'm not belittling the fact that there is a logic to what they're doing, but from a casual viewer point of view, they're going bap, 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 bap. They're hitting each other's swords, hitting each other's bodies lots of times, and then at some point a referee goes, hey, a point, because they've fulfilled a certain set of criteria that means a clean point shown with precision and saying the right body part as you hit it, and all of these kind of things have been met. And a casual audience is like, what? What just happened? At least modern Olympic fencing is a little bit, I mean, it's tag basically, isn't it? It's a little bit more interpretable for most people because, I mean, épée is the cleanest and easiest example. It's just the first person to poke the other person, even if it's a 25th of a second before the other. Fairly straightforward, so it's tag. Now, again, we come back to HEMA. We got problems there because you can follow the épée scoring that's kind of routine. And, you know, I was going to mention the combined weapon system. So this is something that came along a few years ago and it got lots of hype, it got lots of money poured into it. They had these body suits that registered impact force and all this kind of stuff. You could strike, you'd hit with weapons. They got people involved from Kendo, from Filipino martial arts, from HEMA, all different types of systems, all having a go at it. And they all had lots of fun. And then it didn't go anywhere. I think it was Australian company was trying to get it off the ground. And essentially, it just wasn't very popular. Equally, you've got Night Fight, which was essentially Bohurt on TV. And that wasn't very popular as either. So we come back to the point of why. I think the problem with armchair violence is assumptions is number one, that HEMA people want that goal. They want it to have this UFC type budget stuff. I'm going to leave that to one side. I don't actually care. I kind of agree that what he says is the correct route to get to mass popularity, but here's the elephant in the room that I think got ignored. People have tried it, okay? Whether it's Bohurt, which is hugely popular, but is nothing like UFC, or whether it's something like this combined weapon system type thing, or whether it's Night Fight, which was on television, the fact is none of those things really seem to have taken off the ground like straightforward boxing or straightforward kind of, you know, MMA does. And why? So I think it comes back to this fundamental point of relatability. I think that the mass audience looks at a sword or a spear and they're like, what's that got to do with me? So in all my years, nearly a decade now, of doing this channel, I have obviously I've done huge amounts of videos talking about historical weaponry, and I look in comments and I'm obviously continually getting comments under my videos on videos that I did years and years ago. And one of the most regular, if not hugely frequent, but the most regular types of comment I get under my videos by casual viewers who don't know anything about my channel but have just found one of my videos is, oh, what's the point of all this? Just use a gun. Okay, just use a gun. Or well, if I was attacked, you know, I'd do this and that, but like, I'm not going to have a sword with me. I'm not going to have a halberd with me. So the point is that a casual viewer, the mass of the public, not you guys that are watching this channel, not even the people that watch Armchair Violence or, you know, martial arts channels in general, typical people on the street, down the pub, in your office, in your schools, those people, when they think of a fight, if you say, oh, I just walked around the corner and I saw a fight, the first thing that comes into their brain is not two guys in armor with swords. It's not two samurai with naginata. It's not even two people with knives. The first thing that comes into their brain is this, okay? Is fists, wrestling, maybe a bit of kneeing and kicking, okay? When you say just the word fight, I saw a fight, or I had a fight last night, what most people think of is fists and feet and heads and rolling around on the ground, okay? So I think it's all about relatability. The mass of the people out there, always and forever, when they think about fighting, they think about using their hands and feet, and this is what they can understand, and this is what they can see the effects of. You can have people wrestling, you can have people boxing and kickboxing, and you can have them do it full power without killing each other very often, and you can see the full effects of that. You can't do that with armed martial arts, and most people don't know what it's like to hold a medieval weapon or any other period weapon, and don't really understand what those weapons do to other people, apart from playing video games. I hope this has been thought-provoking, if slightly depressing, because I don't think HEMA can ever be as popular as something like UFC, in the same way that fencing at no point in history was ever as popular as boxing and wrestling. Throughout history, boxing and wrestling have been the preeminent spectator combat sports. They always have been, even in the Roman era. And the only thing really where the gladiatorial games stand out from everything else in history, but they did it to the death. so you could see the effects, you could see the blood, you could see the people dying on the sand. We can't do that these days. So boxing and wrestling have always been most popular across the world and will continue to be. I hope this has been thought-provoking, and I hope I'll see you back on the channel soon. Cheers, folks. Thanks for watching. We've got extra videos on Patreon. Please give our Facebook a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Cheers, folks.